have debt? Are you wondering how to budget around it? Then you can't miss today's Toronto Speaks Personal Finance. Hi, I'm Liz Namofsky, host of Toronto Speaks Personal Finance. Accumulating and paying off debt today is extremely different from what it was 20 years ago. Low interest rates and a more positive economic outlook has caused Canadians to borrow money at larger rates with hopes of paying it off later. In fact, it's estimated that Canadians will borrow an average of $19,534 within the next year. A Statistics Canada report released in September 2016 said that Canadians owe $1.68 for every dollar of their disposable income. And if there is a modest interest rate increase, even 25 basis points, many Canadians will not have enough cash flow to cover their debt. Whether it's a student loan, credit card debt, or a mortgage, there's a lot of embarrassment and some shame associated with debt. And sometimes it can seem impossible to get past this stage and become proactive. So why do we accumulate debt? And how do we create a budget? And how about our credit history? To help answer our questions, I'm joined by Lori Campbell, CEO of Credit Canada Debt Solutions. Welcome back to the show, Lori.
Thank you so much.
You know, we've talked about this for years. And in September, your organization just celebrated your 50th anniversary of being in business and helping people.
Yes.
And during the speeches, I think you said that you helped over 2 million Canadians within that time frame.
Correct. You know, and that's the interesting thing, that every year the numbers of people that we serve go up. So last year we served over 60,000 people just in 2015, and the numbers are even greater this year. So there's no shortage of people that are experiencing financial difficulty, and over the years the problems seem to be similar.
Well, the thing is, you know, people always think about debt as being a recent thing, or it's a now thing.
Right.
But you've been in business for 50 years, and you've been helping that many people. And when I was at your function, your event, you read this amazing letter. And
I brought
if you can, I would really like for you to read it, because I think it hits home, and I think it'll resonate with a lot of people.
Well, it tells you that the experiences that people were having back in the mid-1960s and late 1960s are similar to what people are experiencing today. And this is a bit of a successful letter. So it's dated February 8th, 1968. Dear Sir, I find at this particular time I would like to take a few minutes to express thanks on behalf of my husband and myself for all of your responsible at credit counseling. No amount of writing could explain what peace of mind I have now after years of dreading the knock on a door or the simple ringing of a telephone. I can tell there's a big difference in my husband's step as he walks out the door on Monday. I mentioned Monday because it was the most dreaded day for us. I also know when I go out, I certainly hold my head higher because I feel a big weight lifted. I could look up some big words, maybe say this letter a bit fancier, but I'm a small woman with a big, grateful heart, and this is the only way I can express myself. And so this is a person that had debt, repaid it through credit counseling, got on track with a budget and money management, which seems to be a never-ending problem, ageless problem for people way back in 1968. And these types of problems we're seeing today.
So I think when we go on to the next segment, we're going to talk about budgeting and how to put one together and the importance of it. But, you know, I'm wondering whether accumulating debt is genetic. Is it genetic?
I don't think it's genetic. I think it has something to do with upbringing. So, I think it could have something to do with upbringing, but that is a learned behavior. I think each and every one of us has the ability to manage their finances appropriately. Unfortunately, because of perhaps childhood messages, because of temptation in society, because of a number of factors, individuals get off the rails financially, get themselves into debt, but we certainly see enough success stories to tell us that with discipline, financial management, and goal setting, people can get themselves out of debt, can learn to save money, and get back on track financially. So genetics, even if they do play a small part, I think it's so small and minimal that people can overcome that type of issue.
Because, you have people that joke around, oh, I'm a shopaholic. If I go out, I want to do this, or I'm a hoarder, or whatever it is.
Yes.
Or if they're depressed or they're not happy with their day, they'll go out and they'll buy themselves something. So to me, I'm just wondering if it's more of an addiction as well.
It could very well be an addiction. Now, there's a very good point, because people may turn to that in times of stress or in times of anxiety to overcome that feeling by going out and shopping. But the sad reality is, like many addictions, the anxiety and the stress become greater after the consumption of goods or the purchase, because they feel stressed out about the finances after, you know,
Right.
in the long run. But you know, money messages play a big part as well. Think about it, Liz. When you're growing up, if you hear things like, "Oh, I'm not good with money. I'm not good with numbers. You know, people who are rich are greedy. So don't try to squirrel away too much money." You know, et cetera, et cetera. Those money messages get internalized, and that's the way you start to think about money growing up. A good example is people who win the lottery.
Right.
Often they're broke within 5 years simply because they don't see themselves with money. They don't feel comfortable with money, so this blow it, and they may do it subconsciously.
You know, I always find that financial literacy is really, really important, because it helps you wrap your brain around it. It helps you understand the whole monetary situation even better. I mean, I'm a very tangible person. I
Right.
like to touch things. I like to hold things. But money is fluid. And especially with Interact now and credit cards,
Exactly.
you actually don't see how tangible money is.
You don't see the actual cash exchanging hands anymore.
So I like to think of the fact that, you know, especially if you're teaching children, put something in a piggy bank so that they can visualize it and see exactly how much money is going in there. And if they need to take some money out, it's easy for them to just pull it out of there.
Exactly. That's a very good way of teaching children, because they need to visualize and see exactly what money is there, what they need to spend on something, and then they make that trade, or when they go and purchase something and they see what's left behind. Very important as a step when you're teaching children, rather than using the debit card.
I agree. Lori and I will be back after the break to discuss how to budget successfully and how to help you out here on Toronto Speaks Personal Finance. Hi, welcome back to Toronto Speaks Personal Finance. I'm Liz Nemofsky, and tonight we're talking about debt and how to budget around it. Joining me now is Lori Campbell, CEO of Credit Canada Debt Solutions. Now, Lori, before we went to the break, we were talking about how, you know, money is so fluid. It's really
Right.
hard for people to wrap their brain around the fact that, you know, it's a tangible thing.
Exactly. And you know, as technology gets even more progressive, we're seeing smart wallets and those types of things. So, you know, you're putting your phone up to pay.
Right.
And money becomes so removed, the actual cash becomes so removed from the purchase. And that's where people really need to keep a tally of what they're actually spending, or ask themselves a simple question. For every purchase they make, is it worth that amount of time in hours that they'd have to work to make back that money?
Okay.
And sometimes it's a good question to ask. Is it worth 2 hours of my time, that purchase, in order for me to recoup it over you know, my workday?
Okay, so let's just begin from the very, very beginning. What is a budget, and how do you create one?
Well, a budget, first of all, a budget is not a 4-letter word, you know, and make that clear, but a budget should be very fluid itself. You create one by, first of all, figuring out what your expenses are today. So people go and they make budgets and think that's the way they should live their life. No, they should actually start keeping track of their expenses, and then create a budget after a month of keeping track of their expenses to figure out really what they are spending today, what they can cut back, and what they can afford to spend in the future. And a budget should be something that becomes intrinsic. It's not realistic to think that people are going to write down their expenses every day for the rest of their life. But it is realistic to intuitively know that I don't buy a coffee every day because in my budget that's not allowed. Or I don't go out and buy my lunch every day. I only buy it on Fridays because that's what my budget will allow. And if you can intuitively start to think like that, a budget becomes much less painful.
But a budget is actually not that difficult to put together, because you automatically know what your monthly payments are for certain things, right? You know,
You
you've got,
should.
yeah.
But people come into our office every day, and we ask them what their hydro is. We ask them what their groceries are. We ask them what, you know, simple expenses are. They often have no idea. So unfortunately, most Canadians don't know where they're spending their money. That's one of the biggest problems we see.
You know, and it's a really good point that you said, you know, don't buy your coffee. I don't buy my coffee every day. I haven't done that in years. And I don't buy my lunch every day either. I'll make sure that I'll make something and I stack it up.
And it becomes a habit, right? Because
does.
I don't buy my lunch either. Now, when my children were very, very small, I used to want to treat myself for lunch. And I got out of that habit. And once I got out of that habit, it took, you know, about a month. It's rare that I eat out, that I would buy lunch out, because I can't stomach making that payment or that cost now. And it becomes very intuitive again to just make sure you put your lunch together. So it's habit forming as well.
So we were talking about this on the commercial break. I went online and there's so many different websites that say, you know, the rule is 50, 30, 20. 50% of your monthly income should go towards fixed expenses, 30 towards lifestyle and entertainment and travel and food, and 20% towards debt reduction. And you said no.
Absolutely not.
But that's what's out there. So
yeah, I know.
Why not?
Because it's missing a big component, and that's savings.
True.
People do not have emergency funds. People do not have enough saved to even begin to think about retirement. So we're missing a huge factor. Why is 20% going to debt reduction? I'm assuming that 50% in your monthly expenses and fixed expenses, your mortgage would be in there. Therefore, you don't need anything in debt reduction. Your goal should be to have zero in debt reduction, because you don't have debt that outside of your mortgage and secured debt to really have to deal with. And so you should be putting that money into savings.
I think the key too is people have to be extremely honest with themselves and not fabricate numbers or make numbers up or just say, oh, you know, I'll skip it this month. I mean, when you have a budget, you have to be very, very on top of it.
It's very painful. At first, it's very painful, but to get through that process, and once you actually start to get through this process, we hear this all the time from clients, that once they get through this process and they start to head in that direction, they start to feel fantastic. They have less stress. There's less decision making, because you know you're not supposed to do something, so there you go. There's less decision. They're moving forward. They're hitting their targets. Their goals are being met, so they have more confidence as well.
So do you think if people use cash instead of credit cards, it makes them spend less?
It could. It could very well make them spend less, because credit cards are the number one problem we see with people abusing their finances, because it's easy to use a credit card and not really know where you're going. So that could be a good rule of thumb. I'm a little bit nervous about people carrying huge sums of cash. They could use their debit card, but as long as they are actually keeping a tally of what they're spending, so they're not using money that might be earmarked for rent or their mortgage because they haven't kept track.
There is, I was talking to you about this young blogger. She's 28 years old. She's Canadian. And I actually contacted her to be on the show today. But she's paid off all her debt.
Yes.
She did it within 2 years, $30,000. She moved back in with her parents, I believe, for a small amount of time. And now she's driving through the United States for 2 months. And she's writing a book. So
yeah, and her story is quite interesting, Liz, because the way she did this was by not spending anything on anything. She had her mere necessities, you know, your toiletries, the basics that you need. She would not buy herself a coat, a pair of shoes, a shirt, anything for a long period of time in order to pay this off. That may be too extreme for some people, but it's a challenge, right? She said the challenge was for her to see if she could do this, to see how it changed her thought process, and to see if she could get herself out of debt, which she was able to do. And she said it really changed her in a way for the better, because she really felt good about what she was doing. She felt she wasn't consuming as much as, you know, she had in the past. And it really made her think about why she was spending money and the behaviors around spending money and the emotional stress that she was under at times, which made her spend.
But she also lost 30 pounds.
Yes, so she did a number of things as well. I mean, she went from A to Z in a period of 2 years. And, you know, that's a pretty big task to take on, but small steps in the right direction.
And just before we go to break, what happens, like just quickly, if somebody, you know, goes off the rails and stops doing their budget? How do they just get back on it?
Well, you know, that's why there's not-for-profit credit counseling services across the country. We actually help people look at a budget again. We kind of hold their hand a bit to find out why they've gone off the rails, what they need to do to get back on the rails, make sure their family's involved.
We'll be right back to chat more about budgeting and debt here on Toronto Speaks Personal Finance. Don't go away. I'm Liz Namo. Kozlovsky. Welcome back to Toronto Speaks Personal Finance. And I'm here with Laurie Campbell, CEO of Credit Canada Debt Solutions. And we were just talking about fraud.
Right, yes.
And I think that's really, really important. So do you. And let's just start.
You know, one of the biggest things one of the most important things to me is consumer protection, because we see so many people that are getting ripped off. I mean, there's that Revenue Canada scam going around where they're phoning people, telling them they owe something and they can pay it back by giving their bank account or credit card information. Revenue Canada is never going to ask for that. They're never going to phone you for that.
And I get those phone calls all the time. I come home from work and they're actually very, they're threatening.
They are.
I understand it, but there's a lot of people out there that may be elderly, that don't understand the English language that
That's
much.
right, yes.
And so they will feel threatened and afraid. And because they use the language, get your lawyer, call us,
yes,
and we'll come after you.
Yes, exactly. And it is very, and the thing I would suggest to people strongly is that if Revenue Canada doesn't send you anything in writing that you owe something, then as far as I'm concerned, you don't owe anything. So until you get something in writing from them, because that's the way that they operate, do not be, threatened by these types of calls. Hang up and contact Revenue Canada yourself and report this.
Yeah, and you know what? If you do have them on your voicemail at home, just delete it. Because it means nothing, and all they're trying to do is scare you so that they can get your personal information.
Exactly.
And then defraud you.
Exactly. And people have been taken for thousands of dollars.
What other words of wisdom do you have for fraudsters, for people to protect themselves
Well,
from
if it sounds too good to be true, like anything else, if it sounds too good to be true, it's not true. We were going to talk about credit scores and credit ratings. People think that, my credit score or my credit rating can be improved, or my bad credit rating can be erased if I pay money and this company goes and does this for me. They cannot do that. Okay, the information is going to stay on your record for the period of time that's legislated by law. There's nothing anybody can do. There's things that you can do to help improve over time your credit rating and there be your credit score. But it takes time, and it takes perseverance, and it takes smart planning. Don't expect someone else to be able to do this for you. We've seen people pay thousands of dollars with no results.
Oh, wow. Okay. So the bottom line is you can't spend your way out of it and get a good credit score.
Exactly. You can't spend your way you can't spend your way to a good credit rating.
Right. So how do you create, how does somebody get a bad credit rating, and then how does somebody get a good one?
Okay, so unfortunately, if you don't make your payments as agreed, your credit rating is going to be impacted. If you get a bill in, it says make your payment, but even if it's a minimum payment by such and such a date, and you don't make it, then it starts to show on your credit rating as a default. After 6 months of no payment, it's going to show a rating 9, which is the worst rating you can have. The best rating you can have, this is for a revolving credit, your credit card, is a rating 1. And that means you've made payments as agreed every month. Okay, and then it goes, so it's progressively worse. And there's open credit, there's installment loans, and there's credit cards that can be shown on this credit report. Your credit score is made up of how you've paid over time as well. So you know what, you may have a rating 1, but if you only paid twice for the last 2 months, there's not enough history. So they're going to look at how long you've made payments, how well you've made payments. So your credit history as well as your credit rating. It's going to look at how long you've had your job, your income, assets, and those types of things as well.
So how often should someone check their credit score?
Well, once a year is fine. Your credit rating and your credit score could both be checked once a year. And the reason I say your credit rating separately is because your credit rating may have information on there that should not be on there. Maybe you've never had this particular credit card, but it's listed on there, and you're wondering why. Hey, that's not my credit card. Please do an investigation. Find out what's going on. Maybe someone's taken credit out of my name, or maybe it's been put there in error.
Is that what you were tweeting about today? That I think you retweeted something about credit card. If you actually didn't have a credit card, but all of a sudden you get some sort of an invoice in the mail.
Yes, absolutely. That could be an example of fraud, or that someone has actually taken out information in your name, or fraud. It might be a fake company, because they're always on. There's another ploy that we see with fraud, is that hey, this is TD Bank. I got a text the other day, Bank of Montreal, you've got to contact us about your account. There's something wrong with it. I don't have a Bank of Montreal account.
Right.
So we know that that's fraud.
Right. And the other thing that you just brought up, which I think is really, really important, you were talking about minimum payment, which a lot of people do.
A lot of people think that that's the greatest thing in the world. I've made my payment as agreed. That's all the creditors asked me to make. No, you must, take a very good look at that and find out what the interest you're paying on that is. If you have $1,000, you're only making a minimum payment of, $25 a month. it's going to take you X amount of years, and I mean
And
X,
a
a lot of years,
money.
and probably 3 or 4 times the purchases that you make to pay that off.
So what would be the basic rules of money management then to help you? So you've set your budget, you're practically out of debt, or now you are out of debt. What are the basic rules to keep you on track?
One thing that I think is really important, Liz, is don't complicate things. Money should be fairly straightforward, and it is fairly straightforward. A lot of things out there make you feel like it should be, that it's more complicated than it is. So the basics, stick to a budget, pay your bills on time every month, pay your credit cards in full every month. Put away an emergency fund, 3 to 6 months over time of your salary for emergency. Start a savings plan for retirement. Teach your children at a young age about how to manage money. And when I say teach them, take them to the grocery store with you when you go grocery shopping. Show them how much things cost. Don't take every opportunity that you can to talk about money, age appropriate of course, and how it impacts the family budget. You'll be surprised how much they pick up over time if you do that. It's a very wise thing, and a very valuable thing you can do for your children.
I think that's a very wise thing that you just said, because last year on one of the programs, someone had emailed me and said, you know, my son is 5 years old, he wanted to buy something, and I said, no, we don't have the money for it. And he automatically said, put it on the credit card.
Yes, yes. And that's what children think, because that's all they see. They don't see cash going, you know, they see us going to the bank to get cash, we'll just go get back more, or they see the credit cards being used. And it's really, everything's a teachable moment, and there's great value in showing your children, age appropriate again, what your hydro bill is, what, you know, talk about what your mortgage is, and you have to, you know, give them more information so that they are equipped to understand the cost of living and the importance of getting a good job in order to be able to fund those costs.
That's important too. And one of the important things that my father always taught me was, if you can't afford it, don't buy it.
It's simple. See, it's always money 101. The things that our grandparents were doing, saving for a rainy day, never putting on credit what you couldn't afford to pay back, making sure you saved up for things. Those are all wonderful tools that we can use even today.
Okay, well, don't go anywhere. We will be right back, and a little bit more with Lori and myself. The best way to reduce debt-related stress is to talk about it with your partner or someone close to you, and then do something about it. Efficiently pay off your loans, more than just the minimum, and ask for help if you need it. It may seem daunting, but having an expert to help you will allow you to find a specialized solution to your debt problem. And remember, there are many solutions and an array of credit counselors available to help you. All you have to do is reach out. As for budgeting, remember to prioritize your needs. What is best for your life and budget might not fit into a cookie-cutter mold. And don't compare yourself to your friends or neighbors. When it comes to debt, just get rid of it. I'd like to thank Laurie Campbell for joining me and you, our viewers, for watching. I'm Liz Namovsky. Bye for now.